My niece stood in my restaurant kitchen and told me the health department was shutting me down tomorrow. You're too old to run this place anymore. Uncle David, she said, her voice steady, practiced. Behind her stood a woman in a dark blazer with an official-looking badge. This is Inspector Williams from the Oregon Health Authority. She's documented 17 violations. You'll be receiving the closure notice by morning. I looked at the stranger, then back at my niece Jessica. The lunch rush had just ended. Through the kitchen window, I could see the dining room where I'd served this community for 42 years. The place was spotless, as it had been every day since 1983. Jessica, I said slowly, what are you talking about? She pulled out her phone, scrolling through what looked like photographs. Rodent droppings in the storage room, expired food in the walk-in, cross-contamination issues, broken refrigeration units. She turned the screen toward me. The photos showed a restaurant kitchen, but not mine. Wrong tile pattern, wrong equipment. Inspector Williams has been investigating for 3 weeks. The woman with the badge nodded grimly. Mr. Foster, at your age, maintaining health code compliance is challenging. The documentation is extensive. The state recommends you cease operations immediately and consider selling the property. Something cold settled in my stomach. I'd been through 34 health inspections in my career, always passed. The real inspector, Maria Rodriguez, had been here just 2 months ago and given me a perfect score. Can I see your credentials? I asked the woman. She pulled out a wallet, flashing an ID card too quickly for me to read. Mr. Foster, we can do this the easy way or the hard way. Your niece has generously offered to handle the transition. She's found a buyer for the property. Someone who can bring this building up to code. A buyer, I repeated. Jessica's expression softened into something meant to look sympathetic. Uncle David, I know this is hard, but you're 68 years old. You've been living in that apartment upstairs, alone, since Aunt Marie died. The stress of running this place, it's too much. I've watched you struggle. I'm not struggling. You are, she insisted. Last month you left the stove on overnight. Remember? I had to drive over at 2 a.m. because the alarm company called me. You could have burned the whole building down. I hadn't left anything on. I'd been over every inch of that kitchen before bed, same as always. But I didn't say that. Instead, I looked at Inspector Williams. Which violations did you document? She glanced at Jessica, just for a second, but I caught it. I'll be submitting the full report tomorrow morning. You'll have 72 hours to respond before we post the closure notice publicly. I want to see the report now. Mr. Foster, Jessica cut in. Fighting this will only make it worse. The buyer I found is offering $4 million for the property. That's generous for a building this old in this neighborhood. You could retire comfortably. Move somewhere with less stress. Maybe one of those nice senior communities in Beaverton. $4 million. The restaurant and the building it occupied were worth at least $7 million. I'd been getting offers for years, but this place was more than real estate to me. Who's the buyer? I asked. A restaurant group, very reputable. They want to preserve the space, renovate it, keep the neighborhood character. She was lying. I could tell by the way she held her phone, thumb hovering over the screen like she was ready to show me something but thought better of it. Uncle David, I've already consulted with a real estate attorney. If you sign the papers today, we can have this handled quietly. No public health scandal. No news stories about code violations at Foster's Kitchen. Inspector Williams added, the closure notice will be public record. In my experience, restaurants rarely recover from that kind of publicity. I looked at both of them. Jessica had her mother's eyes, my sister Linda's eyes, but there was something in them now I didn't recognize. She'd been coming around more often in the past 6 months, asking questions about my will, my retirement plans, whether I'd considered selling. I'd thought she was concerned about me. Now I wasn't sure. I need to make a phone call, I said. Uncle David. One phone call. Then we can talk about this properly. Jessica exchanged another glance with Inspector Williams. Fine, but the inspector has other appointments. She can't wait long. I walked into my office, a small room off the kitchen where I handled paperwork and payroll. On the wall hung 42 years of memories. Photographs of staff, regular customers, community events. Marie and I on opening day, young and terrified and hopeful. The restaurant had been her dream first. She'd grown up in her grandmother's kitchen in South Carolina, learning to make biscuits before she could read. When we moved to Portland, she'd wanted to share that food, that love, with our new city. She died 6 years ago. Pancreatic cancer, fast and cruel. The restaurant was the last place I felt close to her. I pulled out my phone and opened the contact list. It had taken me 3 years to really learn how to use this thing properly, but I'd gotten good at it. I scrolled past recent calls, past my doctor and my accountant, down to a group message thread I'd started 5 years ago. The thread was called Foster's Family. It had 284 members. I typed, "Need you, today, 3 p.m. Emergency." Then I hit send and walked back into the kitchen. Jessica was showing Inspector Williams something on her phone. They stopped talking when I entered. "Ready to discuss this rationally?" Jessica asked. "Not yet," I said. "I need a few hours to think. Can you both come back at 3? Inspector Williams frowned. "Mr. Foster, I have a schedule." 3 o'clock, I repeated. "If you're really shutting me down tomorrow, you can give me a few hours today." Jessica looked like she wanted to argue, but something in my face stopped her. "Fine, 3 o'clock. But Uncle David, please don't make this harder than it needs to be. I'm trying to help you." They left through the back door. I locked it behind them and stood in my empty kitchen, listening to the hum of the refrigerators, the tick of the wall clock, the familiar sounds of a place I'd built with my own hands. Then I started making phone calls. The first was to Maria Rodriguez, the real health inspector. She answered on the second ring. "David, how's everything?" "Maria, did your office send someone named Williams to inspect my restaurant?" Pause. "No, I'm your assigned inspector." "Why?" "Someone claiming to be from the Oregon Health Authority was just here with my niece. She says I'm being shut down tomorrow for violations." "David, you passed inspection 2 months ago with flying colors. I'll check our database, but I can tell you right now, we don't have anyone named Williams working health inspections in Multnomah County. If someone's impersonating a health official, that's a crime. You need to call the police." "I will. But first, I need a favor. Can you come by at 3 today with your credentials and inspection history?" "Absolutely. I'll bring my supervisor too. This is serious, David." The second call was to Thomas Chen, the real estate attorney who'd handled Marie's estate and various property matters over the years. I explained the situation. He listened without interrupting. $4 million for a property worth $7 million minimum, he said when I finished. "And this buyer is conveniently ready to close immediately. David, this smells like fraud. Don't sign anything. I'll be there at 3 with copies of your property deed and the most recent assessment. We'll shut this down fast." The third call was to my accountant, Sarah. She'd been handling the restaurant's books for 15 years. "Pull the financial records for the past year," I told her. "Every health inspection report, every permit renewal, everything that proves this place is in perfect standing. I'll need it by 3. "On it." "David, what's happening?" "I'll explain when you get here." By 2:30, I'd made 12 calls. Maria Rodriguez, Thomas Chen, Sarah the accountant, my insurance agent, the local news station's investigative reporter, the police non-emergency line, the city's business licensing office, and 5 people from that group thread who lived nearby and could spread the word. By 2:45, I changed into a clean shirt and went upstairs to my apartment above the restaurant. I looked out the window at the street below. A few people had started gathering. I recognized Marcus, who'd been a dishwasher here 20 years ago and now owned 3 food trucks. Elena, who'd started as a host at 16 and was now a social worker. James, who I'd hired straight out of a homeless shelter and who now managed a catering company. By 2:55, the crowd had grown. They stood on the sidewalk, on the restaurant's front patio, clustering around the entrance. I counted maybe 40 people. 40 people who'd gotten my emergency message, dropped what they were doing, and showed up. I went back downstairs and waited in the kitchen. At exactly 3 o'clock, Jessica came through the back door with Inspector Williams. They both stopped when they saw me standing there with Maria Rodriguez, Thomas Chen, and Sarah. "What's going on?" Jessica asked, her confident tone wavering. Maria stepped forward. "I'm Inspector Maria Rodriguez, Oregon Health Authority. I'm Mr. Foster's assigned health inspector. Who are you?" Inspector Williams's face went pale. I was asked to do a supplementary inspection." "By whom? What's your employee ID number?" The woman glanced at Jessica, then at the door, like she was calculating whether she could run. "I think there's been a misunderstanding," Thomas spoke up. "I'm Mr. Foster's attorney. Are you aware that impersonating a government official is a Class C felony in Oregon, punishable by up to 5 years in prison and a $100,000 fine?" "I didn't impersonate anyone," the woman said quickly. "I'm a consultant. I do private health and safety assessments for restaurants considering sale transactions." "Then why did you tell my client you were from the Oregon Health Authority?" "I never said that explicitly. There was a miscommunication." I looked at Jessica. She was staring at her phone, jaw tight. "Uncle David, I don't know what you think is happening here." "I think you tried to trick me into selling my restaurant for half its value," I said quietly. "I think you found someone to pretend to be a health inspector. I think you fabricated violations that don't exist, and I think you've been planning this for months." "That's ridiculous," she snapped. "I was trying to help you. You're old, you're alone, you're not capable of." "Not capable?" The words came out harder than I'd intended. "Jessica, do you know what I did yesterday?" She blinked. "What?" "I cooked lunch for 160 people. I prepped tomorrow's ingredients. I helped my line cook perfect his mother's pho recipe because he wants to honor her memory. I reviewed the books with Sarah and confirmed we're on track for our best year since 2019. Then I went upstairs and video called with my grandson in Seattle and read him a bedtime story. At 68 years old, I'm fully capable." "But the stove," she said desperately. "You left it on. The alarm company called me." "I never left anything on. And I checked with the alarm company an hour ago. They've never called you. There was no incident." I paused. "You lied about that too." Her face flushed red. "This is insane. I'm trying to protect you from yourself, and you're acting paranoid." "Mr. Foster," the fake inspector interrupted, "I'm leaving. This was a misunderstanding. I won't be filing any report." "Actually," Maria Rodriguez said, "you'll be speaking with the police. I called them 20 minutes ago. They're on their way." The woman's eyes went wide. She turned to Jessica. "You said this would be simple. You said he'd just sign the papers." "Shut up," Jessica hissed. Thomas stepped between them and me. "Mr. Foster, why don't you go check on your guests out front? We'll handle this." I walked through the kitchen, through the prep area, into the dining room. Through the windows, I could see the crowd had grown. 50 people, 60, more. Arriving every minute, I unlocked the front door and stepped outside. The patio fell silent. Faces turned toward me. I recognized so many of them. People who'd worked here over 4 decades. People I'd fed when they couldn't afford to eat. People who'd sat at my counter while Marie told stories and flipped pancakes. People who'd become something more than customers or employees. Marcus spoke first. "Chef David, we got your message. What do you need?" I'd been holding it together until that moment. But hearing him call me Chef David, a nickname from years ago, something cracked in my chest. I looked at all of them, at the lives I'd been part of, at the community that had grown around this restaurant like a family grows around a kitchen table. "My niece tried to steal my restaurant," I said. My voice came out rough. "She brought a fake inspector to claim health violations that don't exist. She wanted me to sell for half what it's worth and move into a senior home. She said I'm too old to run this place anymore." Silence. Then Elena stepped forward. "The same niece who used to come in here and complain about the smell of fried food? Who said you should retire and get a condo in Arizona?" "That's the one." Marcus shook his head. "That's cold. What do you need us to do?" "I just needed you to show up. To remind me that I haven't been running this place alone. That what I built here matters." A woman I didn't immediately recognize pushed through the crowd. She was in her 30s, wearing scrubs. Chef David, I'm not sure if you remember me. I'm Amy. I worked here for 6 months back in 2014. I was pre-med, struggling to pay for school. You let me pick up shifts whenever I needed extra money. You never questioned when I needed time off for exams. I'm a pediatric surgeon now. I remember, I said, though truthfully, I hadn't at first. You always wanted to work breakfast shifts. She nodded, eyes bright. You told me once that feeding people was sacred work, that taking care of someone's hunger, whether it's physical or emotional, was a calling. That stuck with me. I think about it when I'm in the OR. She paused. If someone's trying to take this place from you, we won't let them. A man in a business suit stepped up next. David Foster? I'm Kevin Patterson. We've never met, but my father was homeless in the 90s. He told me about a restaurant in southeast Portland where the owner would give him a free meal every morning, no questions asked. Said it kept him alive for 3 years until he got back on his feet. That owner was you. I didn't remember his father's name, but I remembered the policy. Marie and I had decided early on, if someone came in hungry and couldn't pay, we fed them. Sometimes it was 1 person a day. Sometimes it was 10. We never advertised it. We just did it. More people spoke up. A teacher whose first job had been bussing tables here. A contractor who'd eaten lunch at my counter 5 days a week for 20 years. A woman who'd been a single mother struggling with addiction and found community and support in this dining room. A young man who'd started as a nervous teenager on his first day of work and learned kitchen skills that launched his career. The crowd kept growing. 70 people, 100, more than I'd ever expected. At 3:30, 2 police officers arrived. They went inside. I could see through the windows as they spoke with Jessica and the fake inspector. Maria Rodriguez showed them something on her tablet. Thomas handed them documents. Sarah pulled up records on her laptop. Jessica came out 10 minutes later, her face pale and set. She walked past the crowd without looking at anyone, got into her car, and drove away. The fake inspector left in a police car. Maria Rodriguez came out after them and found me in the crowd. David, the fake inspector, confessed. Your niece hired her through some shady online service. Paid her $500 to pretend to be a health official and intimidate you into selling. It's fraud and attempted theft by deception. The DA's office will be contacting you about pressing charges. I nodded slowly. Jessica's mother, my sister Linda, does she know about this? You might want to call her. I did, right there on the patio. Linda answered immediately. David? Jessica just called me crying. She said, you've accused her of trying to steal from you and that you've turned the whole family against her. What is going on? I explained everything. The fake inspector, the fabricated violations, the $4 million offer for a $7 million property, the lies about me leaving the stove on. Linda was quiet for a long moment. Oh, God. Oh, David, I'm so sorry. Did you know? No, I swear I didn't. But 6 months ago, Jessica started asking me questions about your restaurant, whether you'd mentioned selling it, whether you'd told me about any health issues or memory problems. I thought she was just concerned about you living alone after Marie. I had no idea she was planning something like this. Her voice broke. My daughter tried to rob my brother. I'm so ashamed. Linda, her husband lost his job last year. They're in debt. I knew things were bad, but I never imagined she'd do something like this. Using your age against you, exploiting your grief. That's evil, David. She made a terrible choice, I said. That doesn't make her evil. You're being too kind. You've always been too kind. I looked at the crowd of people still gathered on the sidewalk, sitting on the patio chairs, leaning against the building. They hadn't left. They were staying. Like they were worried if they dispersed, something might still go wrong. I don't think kindness is something you can be too much of, I said. By 4 o'clock, a local news van had arrived. A reporter I'd called earlier, Diane Morrison, approached me with a camera operator. Mr. Foster, we heard about the attempted fraud. Would you be willing to go on record? I considered it. Part of me wanted to protect Jessica, to keep this private, but another part knew that elder fraud was happening everywhere, that other people might be facing the same thing, that staying silent helped no one. Yes, I said, but I want to tell the whole story. The interview took 20 minutes. I explained what Jessica had done, but I also explained why this restaurant existed, what it had meant to Marie and me, how it had become a place where people could come not just for food, but for connection, for a second chance, for community. Over 40 years, I told Diane, more than 700 people have worked here. Thousands more have eaten here. This building is worth $7 million in real estate. But what it represents, that's priceless. And I'm not selling it. The interview aired that night. By morning, it had been picked up by regional news outlets. By afternoon, it was trending on social media. The response was overwhelming. People started showing up at the restaurant, wanting to eat there, to support me. The dining room was packed for a week straight. Online, stories poured in from across the country about similar fraud attempts targeting elderly business owners. The DA's office announced they were launching a task force to investigate elder fraud schemes. Jessica never contacted me directly, but Linda called 3 days later. She's been charged, Linda said, her voice heavy. Fraud, attempted theft by deception, conspiracy. Her lawyer says if she pleads guilty, she'll probably get probation and restitution instead of prison time. But David, the lawyer, wants to know if you'll agree to a plea deal. What does Jessica want? She's humiliated. She says she can't face you, that she didn't think about what she was doing. She just saw the money and panicked about her own problems. She knows she hurt you. I thought about the moment in the kitchen when she'd called me too old. When she'd stood there with a fake official and tried to convince me I was incompetent. When she'd calculated that I was vulnerable enough to exploit. Then I thought about the 284 people who'd shown up. About Amy, the pediatric surgeon. About Kevin, whose father I'd fed decades ago. About Marcus and Elena and James and all the others who'd dropped everything because I'd asked for help. Tell her lawyer I'll agree to probation and restitution, I said. On one condition. What? She has to volunteer at a senior center for 200 hours. I want her to spend time with people the age she thought was too old. I want her to see what she couldn't see in me. Linda started crying. That's more than she deserves. Maybe. But I've spent 40 years believing that people deserve chances to be better than their worst moments. I'm not going to stop now. The plea deal went through. Jessica got 3 years probation, had to pay $50,000 in restitution, and do 200 hours of community service at a senior center. I didn't go to the hearing. I figured she was dealing with enough without having to face me. But 8 months later, on a quiet Tuesday afternoon, she came into the restaurant. I was prepping vegetables for the dinner service. The kitchen was empty except for me. I heard the back door open and looked up to see her standing there, thinner than I remembered, tired looking. "Hi, Uncle David," she said quietly. "Jessica, I finished my community service yesterday. 200 hours at the Elliott Senior Center in Northeast. I wanted you to know. I set down my knife. What did you learn?" She leaned against the doorframe like she needed support. That I'm an idiot. That the people I thought were too old for things were actually incredible. There was this woman, Agnes, she's 83. She taught me how to oil paint. She's having her first gallery show next month. And this man, Robert, he's 76 and still volunteers as a math tutor for high school kids. And all of them had these full, rich lives that I just dismissed. Like, age was a disease instead of just time. It's easy to see people as problems instead of people, I said. Especially when you're desperate. I was desperate, she admitted. But that's not an excuse. I looked at you and saw an obstacle between me and money I thought I needed. I didn't see you. I didn't see everything you've built or who you are, or I didn't see you. Tears started rolling down her face. And the worst part is, you were never just Uncle David. You were the person who paid for my mom's cancer treatment. You took out a second mortgage on this building to cover her medical bills. Did you think I didn't know that? I hadn't realized she knew. Linda had asked me not to tell her kids. Hadn't wanted them to feel indebted. Your mother needed help, I said simply. You gave her $60,000. You almost lost this place doing it. And then 5 years later, I tried to take it from you anyway. She wiped her eyes. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't even know if I can forgive myself. But I wanted to tell you face to face. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. The kitchen was quiet, except for the hum of the refrigerators and the distant sound of traffic outside. Jessica, I said finally, do you know why this restaurant mattered so much to me that I wouldn't let you take it? She shook her head. When Marie and I opened this place, we were terrified. We'd put everything we had into it. We barely knew what we were doing. But Marie had this vision. She wanted to create a space where people felt cared for, where someone who was lonely could sit at the counter and chat with the staff, where someone who was struggling could get a good meal, where families could celebrate and strangers could become friends. I picked up a carrot and started cutting it, just for something to do with my hands. After she died, I almost sold it. I couldn't stand being here without her. Everything reminded me of her. But then Marcus came by one day. You remember Marcus? He found me sitting in this kitchen at 2 a.m, just sitting here in the dark. And he said, Chef, you can't close this place. Too many people still need it. He was right. I looked at Jessica. This restaurant isn't just a building worth $7 million. It's 42 years of people who came through that door and found something they needed. Sometimes it was just a good breakfast. Sometimes it was a job that changed their trajectory. Sometimes it was a place to belong. When you tried to take it, you weren't just taking property from an old man. You were trying to erase all of that. I know, she whispered. I know that now. Good. Then maybe we can work on forgiveness. But it's going to take time. She nodded. Can I ask you something? Yes. The morning I came here with that fake inspector, how did you know to call all those people? How did you know they'd show up? I smiled for the first time since she'd walked in. I didn't know they'd show up. I hoped. But I've learned something over 40 years of feeding people. If you take care of others when they need it, they remember. They show up when you need them. Not because they owe you, because that's what family does. But they're not your family, aren't they? Blood doesn't make family, Jessica. Love does. Action does. Showing up does. The people who came here that day, they're as much my family as you are. Maybe more, because they chose to be. She flinched at that, but didn't argue. I should go. I just wanted to say sorry in person. Wait, I said. I went to my office and came back with an envelope. Inside was a check for $50,000, the restitution money she'd been paying in installments over the past 8 months. Take this back. Her eyes went wide. Uncle David, I can't. You can. Use it to get back on your feet. Get your finances sorted out. Pay down your debts. But Jessica, if you ever need help, really need help, come to me first. Don't scheme. Don't lie. Just ask. That's what family does. She stared at the check, then at me, then burst into fresh tears. I don't deserve this. Probably not. But I've never been great at giving people only what they deserve. I'd rather give them what they need. She took the check with shaking hands. Thank you. I'll pay you back. Somehow, just don't steal from any more old people, I said. That'll be payment enough. She almost smiled. Almost. Deal. After she left, I went back to prepping vegetables. My hands moved automatically, the knife work meditative and familiar. Through the kitchen window, I could see into the dining room. It was 4:30, the lull between lunch and dinner. A couple sat in a corner booth. An older man read a newspaper at the counter. A family with 2 small children shared a basket of fries. Just another Tuesday at Foster's Kitchen. The story made it into a few more news cycles over the following weeks. Some positive features about community support, a think piece about elder fraud and how to prevent it, an interview with the DA about the new task force. But mostly, things went back to normal. I kept cooking. The restaurant kept serving. People kept coming through the door looking for something, a meal, a conversation, a place to belong, and finding it. 3 months after Jessica's apology, on a busy Saturday morning, I was working the counter when a young couple came in. They looked nervous, kept whispering to each other, finally approached me. "Excuse me," the woman said. "Are you David Foster?" "That's me. We saw you on the news a while back. The story about your niece and the fake health inspector." I nodded, waiting for whatever came next. Sometimes people wanted to share their own stories of family betrayal or elder fraud. Sometimes they just wanted to express support. That story inspired us, the man said. We're opening a community kitchen in Gresham, a place where people can get meals regardless of ability to pay, where people who are food insecure can eat with dignity. We wanted to ask if you'd be willing to consult with us. Help us set it up right. The woman added, We know you're busy, but you've been doing this for 40 years. You understand how to build something that lasts. That matters. I looked at them, at their hope and nervousness and determination. They reminded me of Marie and me 4 decades ago, standing in an empty space with a dream and no idea if it would work. I'd be honored, I said, and I was, because that's what this had all been about, really. Not the building or the business or the property value. It was about the chain of care that extends between people, about what we pass forward, about how one act of kindness can ripple out in ways we never anticipate. Jessica had tried to take my restaurant because she saw it as money. But the people who showed up that day understood what it really was. Proof that we're not alone, that when we care for each other, when we show up for each other, we create something stronger than blood relation or property deeds. We create family. 6 months later, I stood in the new community kitchen in Gresham and watched the young couple serve their first meals. 50 people showed up. Not because of advertising, they'd barely had time for that, but because word spread, because people heard about a place where you could eat with dignity, where no one would judge you, where community mattered more than money. I thought about Marie, about how proud she'd be, about how a dream that started in a small kitchen with an uncertain future had grown into something larger than we'd imagined. I'm 69 now. People still occasionally ask when I'm going to retire, when I'm going to finally sell the restaurant and take it easy. I tell them the same thing I told Jessica. I'll stop when I'm too old. But I'm not too old. Not while there are people to feed. Not while there are communities to build. Not while there are young couples who need advice on how to start something that matters. Maybe I'll never be too old for this. Because this, the cooking, the community, the care, this is what keeps me young.